shalom bimromav, uya aseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uya aseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uya aseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oseh shalom bimromav, uya aseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav, uya aseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav, uya aseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Yaseh shalom, shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam.
Hi, I'm Celia Lurch, Congregation Micah's Executive Director. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and our entire community, welcome. We will be getting started in a few minutes. The rabbis, musical team, staff, and leadership have some fantastic things planned, and we thank you in advance for tuning in. Take a few moments now to grab your toolkit in your bag. You'll need your candles, kiddush cup, maybe keep the bottle of wine or juice close by. Find a comfortable spot. It certainly won't be the same as having you here, but there will be a few chances to gather soon. Perplexed as to how this will work? We've put together a supplement included in your toolkit to help you navigate the holidays and follow along. No matter how you're celebrating, we send you lots of love from our family to yours. Shana Tova.
La 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 I've been wandering in the desert of doubt, searching for meaning. What is life all about? There are so many paths, and I've explored them all, but I always felt there was a missing piece. Was I somehow denying an important part of me? Then the voices of my people spoke. Now I'm answering the call. Hineni, here I am, ready to receive your holy plan. Openly, gratefully, let me be all I can be. Hineni, here I am. Used to think this all was ancient history, just couldn't imagine what it had to do with me. Stories and tales from another place and time, but my roots go deep, and with each word I read, I could hear my father's fathers and the same words that they said. It's like they all were telling me, this history is mine. Hineni, here I am, ready to receive your holy plan. Openly, gratefully, let me be all I can be. Hineni, here I am. Is opened, so is my heart, and I know I'm not alone. Adonai, as these words are spoken, I'm where I'm meant to be. I am home. Hineni, here I am, ready to receive your holy plan. Openly, gratefully, let me be all I can be. Hineni, here I am. Hineni, here I am.
Good morning. Shabbat Shalom. Hineni, are you ready? I'm Rabbi Lori Rice, and on behalf of Rabbi Flip, our staff, and our leadership, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us. It really breaks our hearts that we cannot be together in person. But Congregation Micah is greater than our beautiful campus. We are so much more than a place. We are a spiritual community. And while we may not be able to congregate in person, we are thankful that technology allows us to connect with each other virtually. We are still Micah. We are creative and resilient. And we still consider all human beings to be part of one big family, connected to one another and responsible for each other. This pandemic has certainly reiterated that. The coronavirus has also served to remind us that how we act and what we do has an effect on our own destinies and the world we live in. And yet, it also makes us consciously aware that we are not ultimately in charge. So today we pray as if the world depends on God, but we also challenge you to act as if the world depends on all of us, because it really does. In times like these especially, we invite you to join us in tuning into our tradition, the Jewish tradition, which all throughout history has helped us find the strength to live in this vast, unfathomable, beautiful, but unpredictable cosmos. Because Judaism posits itself that at the heart of this mysterious universe, there is goodness, and there is purpose, and there is light. And so today is a day to dream, to vision and imagine what could be possible in your own life and in the world, and then to try and make it come true. Because great dreams are the foundation of the world. Consider the Jewish dream. Captured in our quintessential narrative, it's the story of the Exodus, the tale of a people subjugated, dehumanized, generation after generation, all hope of freedom and dignity beaten out of them. And after hundreds of years of slavery, it seems clear that nothing will ever change. And then, everything changes. The Jewish dream is one in which we change the world for the better. And it is this dream, this story, that has inspired and kept the Jewish people alive throughout history. It's given us the strength to believe that at every moment, as we still do, that it's possible for the world to look different than it does right now. Our story, our very existence, is testimony to the possibilities of miracles. And today, on the birthday of the world, it is testimony to our story that we celebrate and offer as a model for our own country, as it struggles for its soul to be a land of the free for all of its inhabitants.
Good morning. Good Yontif, good Shabbos. Welcome. Micah is a place of compassion. We derive this trait from the Torah. For instance, the Bible forbids us from taking an egg while the mother bird sits on a nest. An act of mercy, we are instructed to shoo the mother away before taking the eggs. So in the Talmud, there is this story of a young boy who climbs to the top of a tree, and he reaches out towards the nest to shoo away the mother bird before taking the eggs. And he slips, and he falls, and he dies. And the great Rabbi Elisha witnesses this and is devastated. If such a boy could die in the process of fulfilling a mitzvah, a commandment from the Torah, a mitzvah of mercy, if such a child could die in such a way, then he declares, Leit din v'leit dayan. There is no justice and there is no judge. What can we learn from this story? The world is unfair, with suffering and pain. And it seems sometimes that the good suffer the most. There are certainly lots of reasons to give up. Give up on faith, like Rabbi Elisha, to be angry. But angry is just not a Micah way to be. In every generation, God asks us, with the way the world is, can you still hope? In the face of Roman power or the church, under the rule of the Tsar or the Nazis, in the face of suicide-bombing terrorists, amidst social unrest, in a pandemic, can you muster the courage to still believe in the promises, the possibilities that all the tomorrows bring? All throughout history, Jewish people have looked at our broken world and have had the cosmic chutzpah to say, it doesn't have to be this way. Come be God's partner with us in creating a better world. The story of this congregation, it tells a similar tale. It reminds us that idealism is not a stage you pass through in life. It's not something you outgrow when you're older and wiser in the ways of the world. Idealism, we Jews believe, should stand at the very core of the Jewish self for however long we live. We should never grow resigned to the gap between the way the world is and the way the world ought to be. So we begin by welcoming all y'all under our virtual tent. The words are Ma Tovu, but first.
Before we hear the beautiful words of Ma Tovu, I want to share a story that you may be familiar with. It's from our Torah, and it's about the biblical character Balaam, who was a pagan prophet, and he was sent to curse the Israelites. And so on his way, as he was riding his donkey to go about and do this, the donkey saw something on the road that caused him to swerve. But Balaam, the prophet, didn't see it, and so he beats his donkey and swears at it, eventually threatening to kill it with his sword. And the text tells us that God opens up the mouth of the donkey and gives it the ability to speak. And so, upon seeing their houses of worship, the pagan prophet is overcome with awe and declares, "How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel." And so this morning, as we all gather in our proverbial tents to sanctify this day and this hour, we realize that it really doesn't take an ass to recognize the discrepancy between the way the world is and the way it ought to be. And so, derived from the passages from the book of Psalms, our choir will now sing the remainder of the verses of this prayer as a way of inviting all of us who gather virtually to put on some different lenses and imagine the world this morning as it ought to be.
Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Va'ani berov chastecha avo v'techa אשתחווה אל היכל קודשך ויראתך. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. אדוני אהבתי מאוד ביתך ומקום משכן כבודך. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל.
ואני תפילתי לך לאדוני ברצון אלוהים הרוב הנני באמת נישך. מה טובו עליך יעקב,
מה טובו
משכנותיך ישראל.
ישראל.
אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך, משכנותיך, משכנותיך ישראל.
We begin this day open to the possibility of transformation, ready to release the past with all of its difficulties and to expose our hearts to receive the blessings of the new Jewish year. Like everything in life, the more honest and vulnerable that you are, the more you're going to get out of this experience. Our journey requires that we engage in tikkun ha-nefesh, the repairing of our souls, and tikkun olam, the repairing of our world. And the sages tell the story of a woman whose heart was breaking from all of the pain and injustice in the world, and she cries out to God, "Look at the suffering, the anguish, the distress in your own world. Why don't you send some help?" And God says, "I did. I sent you." The future is uncertain, but today is the day that we rededicate ourselves to pursue a prophetic vision of peace, which is a world where we all live harmoniously, respecting differences, cherishing diversity, with no one exploiting the weak, each of us living without fear of the other, each revering the divinity in every human soul. This next prayer is a reminder that God loves the world and that the Torah, the Jewish path, is our roadmap to building a better world for all people.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת, אותנו למדת. כן אדוני אלוהינו ושפטנו ומנו נשיח בכבודך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ומצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו, ובהם נגן בלילה נגן יומם ולילה. באהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Now, most of us have been around enough to know that life is not fair. The world is an arena in which justice is sometimes absent. And in nature, wolves pounce on baby sheep, cars skid and crash, taking the lives of those who did no harm. Aggressive tumors spread throughout the bodies of very good people. Judaism teaches that it is because the world is not just that we are here. We humans are the catalyst injected into the system. We are the force for morality, justice, and love. The world may be governed by the ruthless law of the jungle, but at Micah, we do not accept that that is the way it's supposed to be. So what do? Well, We can work together as a faith community to help bring justice where we can. We shower each other with mercy and love and support, and we hold each other's hands. We all walk humbly together through the hills and valleys of life. It enables us to see that our destiny is a sacred, shared responsibility. Never before have we been more conscious of our ties to others as we have and are now. As scientists are working together all over the world, and more than a virus which has revealed that the Shema reminds us that we are, in fact, eternally connected, one human to another. And we sing of that oneness now. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
We cannot merely pray to God to end war. The world was made in such a way that we have to find our own paths to peace. We cannot merely pray to God to root out prejudice. We already have eyes with which to see the good in all people. We cannot merely pray to God to end starvation. We already have the resources with which to feed the entire world. We cannot merely pray to God to end despair. We already have the power to clear away slums and to give hope to the masses. And certainly we cannot merely pray to God to end disease. We already have great minds with which to search out cures. And so it is that we've arrived at this point in our service where we consider the sacred power of this day.
Unatona tokef kedushat hayom, ki hu nora ve'ayom, uvo tenasei malchutecha, v'yikon b'chesed kisecha, v'teshev alav be'emet. Unatona tokef kedushat hayom, ki hu nora ve'ayom, uvo tenasei malchutecha, v'yikon b'chesed kisecha, v'teshev alav be'emet. There is power in this day, as before you, God, we pray, and we ask to be inscribed in the book of life. When everything is so unsure, and unlike the years before, we return to you, O God, once more. Natona tokef kedushat hayom, ki hu nora ve'ayom, uvo tenasei malchutecha, v'yikon b'chesed kisecha, v'teshev
Vitale, Vitala, Shemek Dirkusha, Brihu, Le'ela Mikol Birchata, Bishirata, Tushbechata, Benechemata, Damiran Bilma, Behimeru, Amen.
This would be a good time to maybe stretch. We're going to invite everyone to please rise for the words of Avinu Malkeinu, and we're going to read if you're following along on your supplement. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, we have sinned against you. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our children. Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to sickness, war, and famine. Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to all oppression. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for blessing in the book of life. Avinu Malkeinu, let the new year be a good year for us. Avinu Malkeinu, give strength to your people Israel. Avinu Malkeinu, be gracious and answer us, for we have little merit. Treat us generously and with kindness, and be our help.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamod Aleinu, V'alal Aleinu, V'tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kal HaTevet, V'cherev Ra'av, Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kal Kol Tzar, Umasti Ne'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Kodvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Harem, Harem, Kerem, Yisrael Amecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'anenu, Ki ein banu masim, Aseh imanu, Aseh imanu. Tzedakah
us has not faced difficulty this year. Whether through our own illness, or the fear of it, or the illness of a loved one, through a loss or a tragedy, we all at one time or another have needed comfort, solace. Shortly, we will say a prayer for those in need of healing. If you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube and you would like to include names, I invite you to do so and to type them in as you say the names aloud of all those in need of a blessing for healing. Spiritual intimacy comes not from sharing one's pain in a group setting, but rather from the knowledge that all of us are in need of relief. And sometimes the pain, it's not physical at all. In America, you are not required to offer food to the hungry or shelter to the homeless. There's no ordinance for you to visit the lonely or to comfort the infirm. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say you have to provide clothing for the poor. These are values that we derive from another sacred document, the Torah. Michael and Lisa are about to sing about those values now, in a new rendition of the Al Kulam. It's incumbent upon us.
Am I there for those who need me? Giving of my heart completely. Have I been caring and have I been patient? Have I forgiven without reservation?
Do I take my days for granted? Treated others even-handed and shown compassion to the homeless stranger? Have I been humble before my Creator? Ve'al kulam, ve'al kulam, Elohai slichot ve'al kulam, ve'al kulam, ve'al kulam, Elohai slichot ve'al kulam.
If I tread lightly on the planet, have I held fast to your commandments?
And have I raised my voice against injustice? Have I been giving or have I been selfish? Ve'al kulam, ve'al kulam, Elohai slichot ve'al kulam, ve'al kulam, ve'al kulam, Elohai slichot ve'al kulam. Selach lanu, mechalanu, kapelanu ve'al kulam. Selach lanu, mechalanu, kapelanu ve'al kulam.
Ve'al kulam,
Ve'al kulam,
ve'al kulam,
ve'al kulam, Elohai slichot ve'al kulam, ve'al kulam, ve'al kulam, Elohai slichot ve'al kulam.
Remember back before the pandemic when we weren't afraid of the person who just coughed in the same aisle of the supermarket? Or when we got to go to yoga or a gym class? Ah, nostalgia for the past. For a few moments, picture the last time you felt that you experienced paradise. Close your eyes if it helps. Take a few deep breaths. Was it when you were with your family, gathered fireside in a cabin in the woods? Was it with someone special on a beach, listening to the sounds of the waves? Maybe it was a quiet walk alone in Percy Warner Park. In the beginning of the story you are about to hear, our storyteller tells us the Holy One on high, acting as a model, brought order to the chaos that existed and light to the darkness. It remains, in fact, our most sacred task as Jews to bring hope to every corner of this planet that needs it, to help free the captives, clothe the naked, keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. When the world was first created, the result of its genesis was a Garden of Eden, a paradise. So what went wrong? It's hard to tame a garden, but it's possible. It's divine work, and we constantly need to be reminded of doing it. And there is a certain group of people that do just that. They bring chaos to classrooms. They light up others with their knowledge and skills. They embody the Jewish value of education and put it into practice. We award the honor of our first Aliyah to the divine angels on the front line of perpetuating education, the teachers. Whether at Micah or in life, whether in a classroom or in our own kitchens, whether in person or online, the power of love exchanged from parent to child, between lovers and friends, teachers and students, is central in our tradition to maintaining inner joy, to learning how to make the world a better place. It's how we nurture our brains, grow our souls, and bond with one another. Teaching and learning bring much of what is necessary to infuse life with meaning. What new skill have you developed because of the pandemic? What new interest have you possibly explored? Have you bonded with someone in the kitchen learning how to cook? Maybe something new? Have you consulted a neighbor on how to grow something in your garden? If you taught or learned anything in this last year, please accept this honor. Stand up and chant with our Education Director, Julie Greenberg, and Assistant Director, Caroline Rabiner, because we may not be together, but we can feel together. The blessings for the Torah are found on page 17.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. V'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu. The earth was null and void and chaotic. V'choshech al pnei techom. There was darkness on the face of the deep. V'ruach Elohim merakefet al pnei hamayim. But the Spirit of God passed over the waters. V'yomer Elohim yehi or. And God said, let there be light. V'yehi or. And there was light. Vayar Elohim et ha'or ki tov, and God saw that the light was good. Vayavdel Elohim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech, and God divided between the light and the darkness. Vayikra Elohim la'or yom, and God called the light day. La'choshech kara laila, and the darkness God called night. Vayi erev vayi voker yom echad. It was evening and it was morning on the first day.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
We live in a world that is very far from perfect, but Judaism has always had a messianic vision of a world redeemed, a world characterized by justice, sufficiency, harmony, and peace. We cannot expect to complete the task of bringing the world to the ultimate redemption, but we are not at liberty to neglect the charge. On the interpersonal, political, and environmental levels, there is an enormous amount to be done, and each good thing that we do makes a difference. From biblical times to the present, we have had a tradition of resisting oppression. To ensure just treatment means preserving human dignity and meeting basic human needs, including education, dignified work, food, clothing, and shelter. Accomplishing that is a shared challenge. During the pandemic, I have often heard the phrase, "We are all in the same boat." Actually, we're in different boats, fighting the same storm in the ocean. And as we sail through these rough waters, we are all aware that the world is not right. There are people, though, who try to make it right. They dedicate hours and hours of time and money and brain capital. They are leaders here at Micah. They take on the role of stewarding our community economically, policy-wise, and spiritually. And they do it for the purpose of making the world a better place for all. Just like Noah, they are not all Jewish, but in taking on this sacred task, they are all righteous. Will the board of directors please rise and join Andy Saul and Howard Baum and their spouses, Laura and Joy, respectively, in the honor of our second Aliyah this morning.
Adonai Hambarach, Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Ba'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Bar Harbanu Mikol Amin, V'natan Lanu Et Torto, Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Vayar Adonai ki rabba ra'at ha'adam ba'aretz, and God saw how great human wickedness was on earth. V'chol yetzer machshavot libo, rak ra kol hayom. How every plan devised by their minds was nothing but evil all the time. Vayinachem Adonai ki asa et ha'adam ba'aretz, and God regretted making humanity on earth. Vayitatzer ve'elibo, God's heart was sad. Vayomer Adonai ekma et ha'adam asher barati me'al pnei ha'adamah. God said, I will blot out from the earth humanity whom I created. Me'adam ad behema, ad remes, ad beasts and the creepy things on the earth and the birds of the sky. Ki nikamti, ki asitem, for I regret that I made them. But Noach matzachem ba'inei Adonai, but Noah found favor with God. Eile toldot Noach, and these are the generations of Noach. Noach ish tzadik tamim haya b'dorotav, and what was a righteous man, blameless in his age. Et ha'Elohim hitalech Noach, and God walked with Noah. Vayoled Noach shlosha banim et Shem et Cham ve'et Yafet. Noah had 3 sons. Their names were Shem, Cham, and Yafet. V'tichchet ha'aretz lifnei ha'Elohim, and the earth was corrupt before God. V'timalech ha'aretz Hamas, filled with lawlessness. Vayar Elohim et ha'aretz v'hinei nishkata. When God saw how corrupt the earth was, ki hishkit kol basar et darko el haaretz, that all flesh had corrupted its ways on earth. Vayomer Elohim leNoach, God said to Noah, Ketz kol basar ba lifanai, ki malah haaretz hamas mipneihem. I've decided to put an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with lawlessness because of them. Vahineni mashkitam et haaretz, I'm about to destroy them with the earth. Asay lacha teva, make yourself an ark.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam notah b'tochenu, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
So there's a story just I always love to tell about Noah, about when he finally did open the ark doors and saw the world, which looked like a wasteland. There were corpses everywhere. There were plants uprooted. It smelled bad. And at that time, Noah cried out to God and said, you know, in 6 days you made heaven and earth, and it was a garden, like paradise. But now you've uprooted everything that you've planted. You've destroyed all that you've created. Why did you not have compassion on your creatures? And God said, Oy vey, now, after the destruction, you come and plead on behalf of other people? How different Abraham will act, for he will offer his life on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah. But you, when I said I would destroy the world, you thought only of yourself and your own kin. It was then, Rabbi Lori, that Noah realized that he had sinned.
It's also why God called to Abraham and Sarah and sent them on a special journey, one that we are a continuation of, and one that requires making sacrifices. Not the ancient kind where we bring a goat to Micah, but the more modern kind of contributing our time, talents, and treasures to actually making the world a better place. Our third Aliyah goes out to those who have made the greatest sacrifice, fulfilling not just their commitment to their work, but putting themselves directly in harm's way during the outbreak of the coronavirus. and not just themselves, but jeopardizing their families and other loved ones. If you are a healthcare professional, doctor, nurse, hospital employee, if you are an essential worker who through it all got up, put on a mask, and stood face to face with the sick, please rise and join Dr. Stephen and Colleen Heyman in the blessing for Torah, and afterwards Drs. Hillary and Mark Kaplan.
Blessed Adonai, who is blessed. Blessed is Adonai, who is blessed now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai.
They arrived at the place which God had told them to go. And Abraham built an altar there. And he laid out the wood. And he bound his son Isaac. And he laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to slay his son. And an angel of God called to him from the heavens. And said, Abraham, Abraham. And Abraham answered, here I am, and I'm ready. He said, do not raise your hand against the boy, or do anything to him. Because now I know that you fear God. Since you have not withheld your son, your favorite one, from me.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
In the year 586 before the Common Era, nearly 2,500 years ago, the Babylonians laid siege to Jerusalem. And they carried our ancestors off into exile by the waters of Babylon. They laid down and they wept and they asked, why? The prophetical leadership of the time and the rabbis afterward explained that the Babylonians were merely an instrument of God, punishing the people for losing their way, the way of humility, punishing them for casting aside justice and empathy, for disregarding compassion. Same thing happened in the 70 of the Common Era, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and desecrated the Holy Temple. The people of the time asked, why? And the rabbis for centuries afterwards understood the Romans to be an instrument of God, punishing the people for straying from the past. In the aftermath of the Shoah, the Holocaust, the Jewish people turned to their rabbis and once again asked, why? And there were rabbis who once again answered, the Nazis were an instrument of God. There is little that I like about this ancient theological approach to life. It lacks authenticity. It opens the doors to dangerous interpretations of world events. But there is one thing I do like. It puts some of the onus, the responsibility of how the world is and turns out, on us. Because we ignored justice, lacked the mercy to care about others, lost our humility, figured we knew best, the result was a society that lost its way. How we respond to the virus still matters, and we must do our part. When asked what God wanted of us, Martin Buber responded, God does not want to be believed in by us, to be debated by us, be defended by us, but simply to be realized through us. So today, we are reminded of a reform ideology known as hedge our bets. We continue to pray as if the whole world depends on God, but also act as if the whole world depends on us.
Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza b'divrechem hana'emarim ba'emet Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'nviei ha'emet b'tzedek.
Bama akadei Adonai ikaf lelohei marom ha'akdamenu be'olot ba'al kalim b'nei shana.
With what shall I approach the Holy One, pay homage to the Eternal above and within?
Hayirtzei Adonai be'alfei elim b'rivavot nachalei shamen ha'etein b'chori bishi peri vitni hatat nafshi.
Will it please God if I offer my child for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for my sins of my soul?
Higid lecha Adam matov u'madonai doresh mimcha ki imasot mishpat ve'ahavat chesed v'hatznei lechem im Elohecha.
It's been told to us mere mortals what is good and what God requires of us: to seek justice in all its forms, to love mercy and act with compassion towards all, and to walk the path of the holy in a humble fashion.
In a quiet moment on an overwhelming day, escaping from the turmoil, a thought swept me away. Maybe life's complications aren't all that they seem, and answers are more simple than we make them out to be. If you just pray as if the world depended on God, and act as if the world depended on you, Beruach tzedakah v'kavana v'gimelud chasadim. Pray as if the world depended on God, and act as if the world depended on you and me. When we reach out to a neighbor, when we help a friend in need, when we walk the path of kindness, who can say where it may lead? And when life's circumstances are beyond our control, there's a power we can turn to give strength to the soul. If we just pray as if the world depended on God, and act as if the world depended on you, Beruach tzedakah v'kavana v'gimelud chasadim. Pray as if the world depended on God, and act as if the world depended on you and me. Whoa, pray as if the world depended on God, and act as if the world depended on you and me. Depended on you and me.
Depended on you and me. Pray as if the world,
Pray as if the world
depended
on you and me.
Who does not have a running list of the things they look forward to doing or returning to once this pandemic is over? High on my list is going to the theater. I really, really miss Broadway. I was going to sing some Broadway for you this morning, but we'll hold off on that. I also miss traveling. I love planning a trip and then going, visiting friends or family. And if you ask Rabbi Flip, he'll tell you he actually misses hugging. The physical touch that used to come without a care or a second thought, daily, sometimes hourly. On these holy days, our tradition asks us to remind ourselves and imagine that we are standing on the edge of the world as we have known it, and the world as we might envision it to be. Just like the Israelites in the book of Deuteronomy are standing on the cusp of entering the promised land, and Moses is alternating between exhorting the people and inspiring the people, and we hear in Deuteronomy some of the loftiest expressions, some of the greatest aspirations of the society that we will build together on the other side of the Jordan. And this band of probably 2 million formerly enslaved and recent descendants of formerly enslaved people learn that there shall be no poor in this place, that there shall be no impoverished. And we also learn the most pragmatic regulations, like if there are poor and they ask you to help them, you don't say no, and you don't close your hand. We have the opportunity to get this right, to build a society that really is a kind of counter-Egypt, a society that reflects the greatest and most audacious expectations of a people that has been tortured and humiliated and enslaved, a society that is rooted in the radical idea that all people are made images of the divine and therefore have the right to live with dignity. On this day of Rosh Hashanah, we have the opportunity to dream great dreams about building a world that is rooted in our core values. And then there's this very odd turn that the Torah takes. It says that when you go in, meaning into this land across the Jordan, surely you must destroy all of the sacred sites of the nations that you are going to dispossess. All the places in which they were worshiping idols, it says, Abed te'abdun kol hamakomot asher abdu sham hagoyim. Surely you are going to decimate them, destroy them, tear down their altars, smash their pillars, put their sacred posts into fire, cut down the sacred images of their God, obliterating their name from this site. So yes, we're trying to build a society that's rooted in a different set of values by worshiping Adonai, and that will require rejecting the idolatry that's so pervasive in that land. But why the harshness of this, I wonder? Why the obliteration, the abolishing, the burning, the fire? Well, I think what's going on here is that Moses knows something about human nature. Moses knows how fearful we are as people of uncertainty. And he knows that we as human beings will gravitate towards an oppressive known rather than risk a future unknown. Moses knows that the human instinct is to go back to what was, even when what was is the false comfort of Egypt, where we faced the worst kind of degradation. Moses understands that we as human beings will mythologize the past, that we will inevitably begin to view the past through some kind of distorted lens. Because look what happened in the immediate aftermath of our own liberation from Mitzrayim, from Egypt. How many times in the Torah did the Israelites beg to go back? If only we had died in the land of Egypt, where there really was good food, they would say. Or only a couple of months after leaving Egypt. The allure of this mythological past is so dangerous that the Torah has the king warning the Israelites, don't go back to Egypt. You must not go that way again. Because even when we were able to establish our own society, our people still hunger for what was instead of investing in and building what could be. Because we remember without actually remembering. We diminish and even eradicate the memory of the gross injustices, the daily humiliations, the cruelty of the past. We don't remember the truth. It's human nature to grasp onto the past, to yearn to return to something because, as flawed as it was, it's preferable to the uncertainty of what could be. Abed to Abdun. Wipe it out. It's important that you not have it before you, because if it's there, you might want to go back, and you don't want to go back, says the Torah. You might find yourself attaching to the same idols and ideology that led to your enslavement, and that defines those years of humiliation in Egypt. So, here, at this tail end of the month of Elul, we find ourselves standing on the precipice of a new year 5781. And the rabbis offer up a radical idea based on this recurring number of 40 in Judaism. 40 days of rain, 40 years of wandering. They say if you have some character trait that you want to wipe out from your life, you need to determine to overcome it for 40 days. You need to step away from that behavior and from that practice for 40 days. And in the void that's created, you will be able to develop a new nature, a second nature. And then that practice can be removed for good. If you want to leave it behind, you have to distance yourself from it. You have to breathe a different air. You have to train your heart to believe that you can actually live differently than you lived before. And then your new nature emerges, and you don't have to go back. But if you don't spend the time, those 40 days, or say in pandemic terms, these past 6 or 7 months away, instead of separating from the old, dreaming of returning to it, you will never be free of it. The space to develop a new nature, a new set of practices, simply will never return. This was a problem for the Israelites. They had to learn that they had to separate from Egypt not only physically but spiritually. They had to work to rid themselves of the myth of what was and begin to build instead what could be. And Rosh Hashanah gives us the opportunity to practice this muscle of reflecting and routing out and then of building something new. And once we do it as individuals, we begin to believe that we can do it as a society. And I think this is so critical for us right now because we know that we are living through a myth-busting era. The wisdom of our tradition says that real change is possible. Don't dream of going back to what was because it was not so great back there. Instead, dream about what we can build together. Practice separation. Don't pine for the past, but imagine the future and dream about what we can build. We know there is a terror that comes with the unknown, but the past was not all that it was cut out to be. In fact, this pandemic has pulled back the veil on all kinds of systemic inequities that we have been living with for centuries, but when we were deep in them, they were very hard to see and identify. Shortly after COVID hit our shores, it became very clear that Black Americans and Indigenous Americans and all people of color and the poor, that they were more likely to get sick and die from this disease than people who have more resources. And this has us begging to look at bigger issues, exposing great disparities that are part of the foundation of our nation. The confluence of COVID and the high-profile murder of Black Americans, starting with Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and of course George Floyd, have led us to a kind of great national moral awakening in which we now see some core truths very clearly, that a society driven by fear, that is mired in failed moral narratives of patriarchy and toxic masculinity and white supremacy and anti-Black racism, baked into the very institutions at the foundation of our country and penetrating every aspect and every institution of life in America, a society tainted by corruption and hypocrisy and indecency, defined by a lack of social protections for the poor, criminalization, moral judgment of the poor that has left millions and millions of people in desperation, abandoned by those who are called to protect them as they struggle to survive. A society that is the richest in the world, in which 140 million people were either in poverty or poor before the pandemic, when the economic crisis hit. That a society that does not care for the most vulnerable is a sick society. And that is the pre-existing condition. I've been thinking about what will be different post-COVID, and if the answer is that nothing will be different, then we have a really big problem. I fully understand the instinct in times of a people to go back to what was as quickly as possible. But in this case, there can be no going back. This moment is crying out with a kind of moral insistence that says, when we get out of this, and we are allowed to go back on our way, smash the idols of the past, abolish them, obliterate them, so that they no longer tempt us to try to rebuild what was. Instead, use this opportunity as a moment to shift the paradigm entirely and create a new narrative. So here we are on this holy day, the day that celebrates our being partners with God in creating the world, at the intersection of multiple crises throughout our nation, with an awesome opportunity and awesome responsibility to ask, who are we called to be? And what will be the world that we will create? The world as it should be, as we dream it to be. Rav Kook, in Orotat Teshuvah, says when a person entertains the thought of Teshuvah and is beginning to mend his thoughts and feelings, even if only in thought, it's going to start to agitate that person. Have you felt agitated? Because I have. He or she will become conscious of just how many wrongs there are, and he or she will be disturbed. Have you been disturbed? Because I have. This is the phenomenon, because most of the time we are not sensitive to our own offenses. We are even oblivious to them. But once our moral sensibility is awakened, the light of the soul becomes at once manifest. And Rav Kook says that by this light, our whole self becomes subjected to probing. And we start to see defects and problems everywhere. And this will make us more agitated and will provoke a sense of anxiety as we recognize how far we are from perfect and how grave our deterioration has been. But don't lose hope, he says, because it is precisely at this moment that we are able to consider this awareness, this anxiety pointing to the possibility of us actually changing, of us perfecting some of those deep-rooted foundational flaws. And in that realization, Rav Kook says, we begin to find strength in God. And that's where we can begin to be transformed. The work we need to do together will not be easy. Many times in the course of the days and weeks ahead, we will want to go back to older and simpler times. But we have to remember that the glory days are a myth. And the good old days, they were not so good for everyone. Surely you shall abolish the idols of the past. Surely you shall build instead a different kind of future. The Torah offers us two paths, one that leads to blessing and one that leads to curse. And Sforno, the commentator, says, look at this. I give you blessing and curse before you. They are polar opposites. Make sure you don't try to conduct yourself somewhere in between the two, because there is only blessing and curse. There is no middle course. Friends, we are weaning ourselves off a path that was tainted by generations of inequities and injustices and cruelties. Together, we have the opportunity to choose a path of blessing. There is no middle course. I wish you a Shana Tova U'Metuka. May we all find strength and sweetness in the days ahead.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother and I said, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. And oh, there's been times that I thought I wouldn't last for long. Now I know that I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
The Torah recounts to us that when all of Israel stood at the foot of Mount Sinai, the blare of the horn grew louder and louder. Sounds usually fade over time. They don't grow stronger. That first blast of the shofar, heard in the Sinai desert by a small band of newly freed slaves, should have faded over time, as most declarations and experiences do. How improbable that the sound of the shofar, the ram's horn, in the isolation of the desert, grew to be a rallying cry for humanity. We are thousands of years from that moment, thousands of miles from that place. And in the intervening centuries, there have been countless efforts, some through indifference and others marked by savagery, to mute the sound of Sinai. And yet throughout the generations, the sound of the shofar has grown stronger and stronger. Get ready to hear that defiant blare that promises greater and grandeur are possible. Possible even if we can't imagine them. Thank you to our homegrown shofar blower, Bates O'Neill. We please invite you at home to rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar.
Ancestors, bless this country and all who dwell in it. Help us to experience the blessings of our lives, to be vigilant, compassionate, and brave. Help us to channel our anger so that it motivates us to action. Help us to be generous so that we raise each other up. Help us to be humble, knowing that as vulnerable as we feel, there are those at greater risk. Help us to taste the sweetness of liberty, to not take for granted the freedoms won in generations past or in recent days. Help us to heal and nourish our democracy, that its principles may apply to all. And help guide our leaders with righteousness. Strengthen their hearts, but keep them from hardening, so that they may use their influence and authority to speak truth and act for justice. May our nation use its power to be a voice for peace. And together we say, Amen.
We pause, as we always do here, towards the end of our service to think about those people who still touch our lives through their spirits. On page 82 of your supplement, you'll find the words to Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. I invite you to rise and please join me. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba. Ve'alma divra kirutei ve'amlich malchutei. V'chayachon uv'yomachon uv'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'izman kariv ve'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach la'alam u'la'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birkata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechmata. Namiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlomo Rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. We ask as always that the source of peace send peace to all people who mourn, comfort to all people who are bereaved. A few announcements. Children's services will begin at 11:30 this morning with me and Miss Lisa Silver. You can check the website for further details. That'll be on Zoom. From 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we are welcoming people to cast away their sins on the Micah campus in the back near the Little Harpeth River. If your name begins with an A through L, we're inviting you between 2 and 3. And if your name ends between M and Z, we're inviting you to come between 3 and 4. There will be no access to the building. We do invite you to join us on September 26th at 10:30 in the morning for our Shabbat cemetery service. That is an in-person gathering in our cemetery with social distancing and masks required, and that will be on Facebook Live. Finally, be social, at least during this pandemic, the best we can. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay connected. Shabbat Shalom, Shana Tova.
May this be a year of love and kindness.
May strangers come to be friends.
May truth and compassion always guide us. Amen.
May this be a year of hope and healing
For all
long as there are stars above.